All right, so basically sine looks like this, where you start at 0, 0, you come up, you hit 1, peek out, you hit 0 at pi. And then you come down, you come back up again. But I'm not worried about that because what I worry about is what 3 pi over 4 is. So if that's half a pi, then our magic number, it's supposed to be a half a pi, our magic number is that guy. Now, a lot of people, when they're asked to memorize these sines and cosines and stuff like that, they don't memorize anything after pi over 2. They memorize everything up to pi over 2, but no matter. I know from memorization that pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. And since pi over 4 has the same exact positioning as 3 pi over 4, then 3 pi over 4 is also going to be root 2 over 2, so the answer is C. I'm not sure if this problem is a calculator section problem. Maybe it is, and if that's the case, then you just throw that in your calculator. It'll give you some terrible number, but it'll be a positive number, so it won't be you, and you would just have to figure out which terrible positive number matches up with that guy. But again, if it's not a calculator section, you're basically saying, all right, well, pi over 4 is in the same exact spot as 3 pi over 4, so sine 3 pi over 4 is the same as sine pi over 4. Therefore, the answer is root 2 over 2. What is the graph of equation 2 to the negative x plus 1? All right, so this is an example of exponential decay because of that negative x right there. So what you're going to see is you're going to see something that looks like decay, which is that one, or that one. Decay looks like this. So not you, not you. Now, what makes this one special is decay with no attachments always goes through the point 0, 1. Because what's going to happen is 2 to the 0th power is anything to the 0th power is going to be 1. So the equation y equals who cares to the negative x is always going to go through 0, 1. However, we are adding 1 to it. So by adding 1, we're taking our graph and we're shifting it up 1 more unit, which means our guy, by adding 1, is going to go through 0, 2. Which means although this looks promising and has the same shape, this guy goes through 0, 2, which means the answer that we want is A. Now, I don't know if this is a calculator section problem or not. I'm doing pretty much every problem I can without the use of a calculator. And if it was a graphing calculator section, you would just plug it in, match up graphs. But I'm using common sense for this one. And if worse comes to worse, you can always make like an XY table and plug things in and see what happens. And you would find out that if I plug in 0, I would get 2 to the negative 0, which is 1, plus 1 is 2. And that's the guy that I want. And as I do more problems, my numbers get smaller, 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 smaller. Okay? So the answer is A. In 2005, 10 phlox plants were planted in a garden. This sounds like a Dr. Seuss problem. The number of phlox plants increased by 140% each year. Which of the following equations best models the estimated number of plants P in the garden 10 years after 2005? All right, so this is exponential growth. Usually exponential growth looks like this. You have y equals the initial amount times 1 plus the rate as a decimal to the t power, usually the x, or we'll put t there. My initial amount is 10. The percent that it gives me is that it increased by 140%. Which means 1 plus 140 to the t power. So, and they want us to use P, so that's going to be P equals, now 140 as a decimal is 1.4. 140% as a decimal is 1.4. So that when you add these guys up, you get 10 times 2.4 to the T, and that is the answer to the T. Puns. The complete graph of the function f is shown in the xy plane. What is the y-intercept of the graph of y equals f of x plus 2? So if I were to take this guy, okay, f of x plus 2 means I shift everything to the left 2 units. Okay, everything to the left 2 units. Now, where this comes from is the idea of linear transformations that says if you're given, and I know this isn't a linear equation, but it's got linear equation qualities. If I were to give you a linear equation, right, which is in the form m times x minus x sub 1, or you could use h there, plus y sub 1, whenever this number inside the parentheses is negative, you move to the right. When it's positive, you move to the left. And by saying we're going to replace x with x plus 2, I am basically saying let's put x plus 2 in this guy, which means you're going to have a positive 2 living in here, which is a shift to the left 2 units. So if I were to move this whole thing to the left 2 units, that now gives me a y-intercept right there. So my y-intercept is going to appear to be 0, 3, and that's what I'm going with. Very strange problem. I didn't like it, but that's how it's done. One of the 2 equations in a linear system is 2x plus 2y equals 2. The system has no solution. Which equation could the other equation be? Got my answer already. Now, here's why. In an equation, like a regular old one-step equation, a no solution happens when you get something that can't possibly make sense. For example, if you have something like 3x plus 5 equals 3x plus 4, we would look at this and say, well, that's not possible because these guys go away and 5 doesn't equal 4. You made a mistake. There's no solution to that one, because if we were just to look at the similarities and look how these guys were equal to each other, these guys are left over and those don't match up. Similarly, 2x plus 2y is 2. 2x plus 2y is 2. And down here it tells us 2x plus 2y is 3. No, it's not. 2x plus 2y is 2, which means 2x plus 2y can't be 3. These two contradict themselves because this guy and this guy can't equal 2 separate numbers when they're the same thing. The answer is D. Now, a long way of doing this would be solving that for y and finding out which one has the same slope, different y-intercept. But I use common sense for this guy because I know my stuff. It is estimated that humans begin REM sleep 90 minutes or REM sleep 90 minutes after falling asleep. Based on this estimate, how many seconds after falling asleep do humans begin REM sleep? Okay, REM sleep 90 times 60. Let's get a 0, get another 0, you get a 54. Is that really all we're doing, is multiplying numbers? Yep. Okay. The function g is defined by g of x equals 4x minus 2. What is the value of g of negative 3? Basically, you just take negative 3, replace every x with negative 3. 4 times negative 3 minus 2 is the same as negative 12 minus 2, which is negative 14, and I am done. For line segment AC shown, the length of line BC, which is 20, is also 2 times the length of segment AB. So 20 is 2 times x, which of the equations represent. So what did I just say? 20 equals 2 times x. So let's go with D, which is the same thing but flipped. Two people sweep the floor. How nice. The table gives their sweeping rates in square yards per minute. Wow, someone's doing a lot extra at their job. If each person sweeps the floor for 5 minutes, how much greater of an area in square yards does Eric sweep than Jeremy? So this is yards per minute, so let's multiply that times 5, gives you a big old 60. Let's multiply you by 5, gives you a big old 80. How much greater of an area in square yards does Eric sweep than Jeremy? Well, 20 square yards greater, exactly. You just subtract. Which expression is equivalent to x to the fourth times that polynomial? Polynomial multiplication, when you multiply an x to the x, you add the exponent. So 3 just kind of comes along for the ride. X to the fourth times x squared is x to the sixth. X to the fourth times 9x is going to be 9x to the fifth. And x to the fourth times negative 8 is negative 8x to the fourth. Looks like I'm going straight for B on this one. Pretty easy. The function f is defined by f of x equals 2x minus 4. What is the y-intercept of the graph of y equals f of x? So a lot of this is just kind of like fluff. Y is the same thing as f of x. So really, if I wanted to, I can write this out like that. That is the exact same thing as a good old friend I like to call slope-intercept form. That's supposed to be an m. Where b, the number floating around all by itself, is the y-intercept. And that's exactly what it's asking you. What is the y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept is negative 4. They want it as a point, so if the y-intercept is negative 4, then that would be way down here, which is the point 0, negative 4. The answer is D. A museum built a scale model of the solar system throughout its city where 1 mile is the same as 400 mil, or 400 milli as what's his face would say. The model of the sun is X miles away from the model of the Earth. Which expression represents the actual distance in miles? Okay, so this is how I would view it, right? You got less than a mile. Okay, so the distance from the sun to the Earth has got to be like less than that. Like, let's just make believe and say a quarter. Okay, so if the sun to the Earth is a quarter of a mile, then you would take a quarter of this, which means you would take 400 million and multiply a quarter to it. Well, X is not a quarter. X is, I have no idea. But what you would do is you would take 400 million and you would multiply X to that. So 400 million, X is going to be your answer. X is definitely going to have to be a fraction, and it's definitely going to be smaller than 1. So, yeah, that's how I figured it out in my head. For whatever reason, this type of problem, I don't like it, but, got to do it anyway. The table summarizes the number of public schools in 2 California counties in 2017. So you got LA, you got San Diego, and all that information right there. Public middle school will be, okay, so this is a little different from just the regular old totals. A public middle school will be selected at random from the 2 counties. So it doesn't say which one, so I'm probably going to need this number at some point. What is the probability to the nearest hundredth of selecting a school in San Diego County? So what the question is asking us is if I decide to pick out of a pool of 287 middle schools, which one am I going to pick, or how likely is it that I pick one of those middle schools from San Diego? So I get that number right there. I don't know if this is a calculator section or not, but this to me is awfully close to like 150 over 600, which is very similar to 25%. So I'm going to go with 0.28. Again, this is very, 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 but not exactly, very similar to 150 over 600. That's how I view it. That gives me 25%. And since this 165 is a little bit more, and since 587 is a little less, that kind of tilts it a little bit more than 0.25. So that's why I went with 0.28. So I'm going with C for this guy right here. The list shown gives the heights in inches for the 6 10-year-old children in a group. Cool. A 7th child with a height of 60, that, boys and girls, is called an outlier, will be added to the group. Which of the following correctly describes how the mean and the median of the group will change when the 7th child is added? Well, without even looking at these options here, when you add an outlier, it skews the mean. In other words, this drives the mean up. Okay, by adding an outlier that's larger than the other numbers, it drives the mean up. In this case, by adding 60, we change the median from 54 to 54. So mean goes up, median stays the same. And that's the main difference between the mean and the median. Usually when you throw in an outlier skews the mean, but should usually keep the median the same. So that's not true. That's not true. The mean will increase and the median will stay the same. That is true. Again, once you introduce an outlier, the mean will change. The median usually doesn't. And if it does, it's not by a lot. That's why the median is often used as an important measure of central tendency. Line K is defined by y equals negative x plus 5. All right. Line J is parallel to line K. What is the slope of line J? Well, if two lines are parallel, they have the same slope. The slope of line K is negative invisible 1, which means J is going to have a slope of negative 1, which means my answer is negative 1, and that's it. For a survey, students were assigned to either group R or group V. Combined, the students in both groups answered a total of 17 questions. Okay. Of these, a total of 9 questions were answered by V. The equation 4R plus 9 equals 17 describes this situation where R represents the number of questions answered by each student in group R. Okay. Which of the following is the best interpretation of 4R in the content? Okay, so R is the number of questions answered by each student. So 4R is not the number of students in group R, but the total number of questions answered by students in group R. Kind of a strange problem. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But, 9 has to do with V, so, R didn't have to do anything with V. It's not the number of students in group R. Yeah, weird. Don't like it. How many solutions does the equation 5 parentheses x plus 1 close parentheses equals 5x plus 5 have? I'll tell you pretty much right away. But first, what I want to do is I'm just going to quick distribute that guy. So you have 5x, because 5 times x is 5x, plus 5 times 1 is 5. That equals itself, which is an identity, also known as an infinitely many solutions. When you are solving and the left side is exactly the same as the right side, you have infinitely many solutions. Pretty easy. The scatter plot shows the relationship between two variables, x and y. A line of best fit for the data is also shown. So here's our dots, line of best fit. I like it. Which data point has an actual y value that is 2 more than the y value predicted by the line of best fit? Well, it looks like that guy right there. The dot is, oh no, I take it back. I fell for the trap. Each one of these go up by 2, not by 1. So I only want a difference of 1 grid mark. So I want one that is 1 grid mark, which would be you. You have a dot that's 2 more than the line of best fit. And that would be the point 5, what is that, 30? 530. Oh man, I almost fell for it. I almost got it wrong, but I didn't. In a certain school district, 36 high school students were selected at random for a study on internet use and offline reading habits. During October, each student reported the average amount of time to the nearest half hour spent reading offline on Saturdays, and average amount of time to the nearest half hour spent using the internet on Saturdays. The scatter plot above shows the recorded student's line of best fit is also shown. So basically, this kid right here, this lone kid right here who reads 2.5 hours on a Saturday is only online for 1 hour. And then all these other dots, similar. According to the line of best fit, if a student spends an average of 1.25 hours reading offline, so let's find that, 1.25 hours reading offline right here. Which of the following is the best estimate of time the student would be expected to spend using the internet? So let's go up to our line right there. So we're looking at in between 2.5 and 3 hours of time on the internet. Okay, so C is going to be that option. All right, so I'm looking at my line of best fit to get my best estimate. That's what line of best fits do. It correlates to 2.5 and 3. C is my answer. Bada bing. Oh boy. In a certain school district, 36 high school students were selected at random for a study on internet use and offline reading habits. Yeah, I can tell you right now, this is an old study. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I don't know. During October, each student reported the average amount of time to the nearest half hour spent reading offline and on Saturdays, and the average amount of time to the nearest half hour spent on the internet on Saturdays. The scatter plot above shows the times recorded, blah, 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 blah. So basically, a kid right here who spends half an hour reading is online for 1.5 hours, and this kid right here, there's all of these options. This kid reads a lot and never uses the internet. Lucky him. The line of best fit underestimates one student's reported average time spent using the internet on Saturdays by more than 2 hours. For how many hours did the student? Well, we're going to look for where my line, if it's underestimating one kid, we need to find an outlier that's way above this line, and here he is. You're the outlier. Okay, it's underestimating. Now, if this were to say overestimating, maybe we would look at that guy, but that's not what it said. For how many hours did this student's report reading offline? Reading offline, 1.5. So that's my answer. If x is the solution to the given equation, what is the value of x plus 1? Well, let's find out x and then add 1 to it. So distributive property is what I should do first. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 1 is 4. That's going to equal 6. That's a 6. Wow, it's the worst 6 ever. 6 plus 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 1 is 2. All right, let's combine the two like terms on the right. Nothing happens on the left, not yet. 6 plus 2 is 8, so I have 8 plus 2x. Let's subtract 2x from both sides. That gives me 2x plus 4 equals 8. Let's subtract 4 from both sides. That gives me 2x equals 4. Divide by 2, and x is going to equal 2. They don't want x. They want x plus 1. So x plus 1 is the same as 2 plus 1, which is 3, which is b. Really strange, but, not too bad. The initial number of bacteria in a population is 10,000. The bacteria in the population are observed to double in number every 12 hours. Which graph represents the number of bacteria y in thousands x hours after the initial observation? So we're going to kind of pretend that the thousands part doesn't exist. Let me actually get a pen. The thousands part doesn't exist. Basically, at the very beginning, we have 10,000. After 12 hours, that 10 doubles to a 20,000. After another 12 hours, that 20 doubles to a 40. Let's just do one more. After another 12 hours, that 40 doubles to an 80. So basically, we're looking for a graph, and it is, exponential. So you do expect something like this to occur. So one of these guys. But, we're looking for points like 2440 is a good one to look for. So you look like you're 2440. You don't. You look like you're, well, let me see. Hold on. 10, 20, 30, 40. You don't. And you don't. So let me just double check this guy right here. Let's do, if I did one more time, just so I could see like what 46 would be, or 48 rather would be. 48 would be 160, which seems to be pretty consistent right there. There's my 150, so 160 is there after it. So I just basically chose a couple points, made sure that my picture lines up with the points that I chose. Seems to work best for me. A forest contains different species of trees. Let T represent the total number of trees in the forest, H represent the total number of hickory trees, and K represent the number of oak trees. Okay, if a tree is selected at random from the forest, which expression represents the probability of selecting a tree that is neither hickory nor oak? All right, so whenever you do probability is what you want over the total. That's how probability works. In this case, the total amount of trees is T. All right. It tells me that H is hickory, K is oak, because, oak starts with K. And it's asking me, we want everything but that. All right, so you take your total and you subtract out the K and you subtract out the H, and that's going to be the probability. So, that's pretty much how you do it. Don't overthink it. Now, of course, I wrote it out of order, but B is the only one that matches up. They have T minus H minus K, where I have T minus K minus H, same thing, over T. B is my answer. That's how you do probability. Interesting. Fun, though. Look at all these box and whisker plots. Those shown summarize the data in each of 4 data sets. Which of the 4 data sets has a range of 6? Range means largest value minus the smallest value. In a box and whisker plot, the largest value is the extreme, it's called, upper extreme all the way to the right. So that's the largest. That's the largest. The lower extreme is the one all the way to the left. Smallest. So what do I have to do? Or what I have to do is I have to kind of look at each largest value. Say you're a 6, because you are. You're a 2. And find the range, which is largest minus smallest. 6 minus 2. Well, obviously, it's not that guy, because that guy is 4. And then we do it again. You seem to line up with 13. You seem to line up with 3. Let me get my calculator out. It's 10, so it's not you. Now, without thinking too much, look how much larger this range is going to be. If this is 10, then something larger than it is not going to be 6. So the only other option left is D, which is going to be 9 minus 3. And 9 minus 3 is 6. Data set D. D for dandy. The area in square inches of a certain right triangle is given by the equation A equals half of base times 2b, where b is the length in inches of one of the legs of the triangle, which expression represents the length of inches of the shortest leg of the triangle. All right, so I know I have a right triangle. I don't know, that's the worst. I don't know, what my legs are. I just know that that's b. Now, A is usually... the area is usually half of base, so far so good, times height. But instead of height, I have 2b. So if this is a right triangle and one of the legs is b, then the other leg would have to be h, which is 2b. So if that's 2b and that's b, the shortest leg is b. Kind of strange. I liked it. The table shows the results of a survey on the average amount of money, D, in dollars consumers would be willing to spend on a product and their corresponding age, A, in years, which equation could represent this linear relationship. All right, so I like to pretend that this is an X and a Y. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the old-fashioned slope-intercept form method. Y equals mx plus b. Now, the way I can find m is I can use the slope formula, but it's better off to just pick 2 points, which I will use the slope formula. I'm going to pick 2 points, u and u. It doesn't matter really which points I pick, but this gives me the points 25, 42, and 28, 36. The slope formula is given to us by m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. I'll label u x sub 1, y sub 1. I'll label u x sub 2, y sub 2. And according to what I wrote down, y sub 2 is 36 minus y sub 1 is 42. And x sub 2 is 28 minus x sub 1 is 25. That gives us negative 6 over 3, which means my slope is negative 2. So what I have so far is y equals negative 2x plus b. Now right away I know what my answer is. It's that guy. That's supposed to be a circle. Didn't turn out nicely at all. Y equals negative 2x plus b. Just for fun's sakes, I want to prove that b is 92. So what you do in order to find b is you take any one of these points, doesn't really matter, any of these points really, and say, well, you're an x value and you're a y value. So I'll replace that y with 42 equals negative 2 times an x, which is 25, plus b. You become negative 50 plus b, so 42 equals negative 50 plus b, add 50, b is 92. Very sloppy, the order in which I did things. However, I could take this guy, that guy, put it all together and say y equals negative 2x plus 92. However, x should be the age, which is a, and d should be y. So d equals negative 2a plus 92. So I could have given up halfway through, but you know what? It's not going to make me a whole lot of YouTube money, so I kept going. The answer is A. I did it right. At the beginning of the day, there were 500 items for sale in a store. The number of items for sale at the end of the day was R% less than the number at the beginning of the day. Which expression represents the number of items for sale at the end of the day? I hate these problems. Basically, what I do to help me understand what's going on if I can't seem to figure it out in my head is I pretend that that is a number, like 30. All right, so let's just say that there's 30% less in a day, which means there would be 70% less or 70% left over. Where did I get that 70 from? Well, because 100 minus 30R is going to give me that 70. Now that's how many percent I have left over. To find out my items, I would take that 70%, multiply it to 500. So I would take this guy, multiply it to 500. That gives me an answer of D. Ugh, I hate these. That problem's the worst. But that's how I would do it. I would just kind of make believe that R is a random number and let that guide how I would find the rest of this problem. The answer is D. In the XY plane shown, the quadrants are labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. So typical quadrant labeling. The graph of a parabola in vertex form. This is vertex form, so before I even go further, this is saying y equals negative. Usually there's an m there, but there's no m in this case. X. Now this, I take it back. This is not vertex form. Vertex form is x minus h squared plus k. All right, that's vertex form where hk is your vertex. Here it's giving me x plus h. So h and k are positive constants. So what's happening here is if it's plus h, that means I have a negative h value and a positive k, since k is still positive, as a vertex. What they want me to do is what quadrant is the vertex of the parabola. Negative h, positive k is going to be something like, I don't know, I'm making numbers up, negative 3, 4. Which means negative 3, 4 would be the vertex here. This would open downward, but that doesn't matter. Why do I know that that's downward? Because that's negative. So technically, that's not super vertex form. But what I do have is I have a vertex in quadrant 2. So kind of a tricky problem. You have to read that carefully because it's very tempting to be like, oh, well, a positive h and a positive k is going to live right here. Well, that's not really the case for vertex form. So be a little bit more careful when you do a problem like this. Scientists took 94 ice core sections from a glacier. Each section was in the shape of a right circular cylinder and had a length of 1 meter and a diameter of 0.1 meter, which of the following is closest to the total volume in cubic inches of the 94, cubic meters rather, of the 94 seconds. All right, so we've got a cylinder, all right? Diameter is 0.1 meter, but I really don't care about that. I care about the radius being 0.05, which is half of 0.1. The length, which I'm assuming is height, is going to be 1. And which of the following is the closest to the total volume in cubic meters and of the 94 sections? So what I'm going to do is I'm absolutely going to need I'm trying to look to see if there's anything special here. There's nothing special at all. I'm going to have to try to use, or I'm going to have to use a calculator on this one. The volume of a cylinder is regular pi r squared h. So it's going to be pi r, which is 0.5 or 0.05 squared h, which is 1. So that gives me 0.00785. I need to multiply that by 94. Because if every one is that many, then I need to multiply that by 94. Which ends up being 0.7379, which is awfully close to 0.7. Yeah. So you just have to find the volume of each one, multiply it to 94, and then you're donezo. In the figure shown, GE and DH, so GE is this guy, DH is that guy, intersect at point F, all right? Which of the following additional statements is or are sufficient to prove that triangle DEF is similar to triangle? Okay, so these two intersect at F, which means absolutely nothing in proving that these guys are similar, nothing at all. If I can show that DE is a third of the length of HG, would that do anything for me? DE is a third of HG. No, that wouldn't do anything because that has nothing to do with similarity. Just because that guy is smaller than that guy doesn't mean anything. So you really don't matter. DE, which is U, is parallel to HG, which is U. What that would do if these guys were parallel, what that would do for me is that would give me the fact that this would be like a transversal or that would be a transversal, either one, and alternate interior angles would show that these two guys are the same. Similarly, these two guys are the same, which would make these guys are vertex angles anyway, but that still would make these guys the same. And that gives us similarity because of the three angles being exactly the same. So this guy helps us. The first guy doesn't really help us because if I were to take that angle and like bend it, I could still make this guy 1/3 of that, and that really wouldn't help me. So it's just got to be 2. That's the only one that would do it for me. 2 would do it, 1 would not. The answer is B. P% of x is 3. Which expression represents x in terms of p? All right, well, I would like to say p% of x is 3, or p over 100, and I could put the x up here, x equals 3. They want me to solve for x. So if I solve for x, I can multiply both sides by 100. Multiply both sides by 100. That crosses out. That gives me px equals 300. Divide both sides by p. X equals 300 over P, which gives me the answer of C. So it looks like I did a bit too much because 100 times 3 is 300 over P. So yeah, the answer is C. A plant's height is 1.25 times its height from the last week. What was the percentage increase in the plant's height from last week? All right, well, 1.2 times or 1.25 times something is the same as saying 1 plus 0.25 times something. In other words, 100% plus 25%. So the percentage increase is that 25% right there. The answer is D. In a forest, white pine trees between 15 and 45 years old grow between 36 to 45 inches in height each year. Okay. A 15-year-old white pine tree growing in the forest was 240 inches tall. Which of the following inequalities gives all possible values for the tree's height at the end of the 45th year? All right. So basically, I have my answer already. It's right there. But no, I take it back. At the end of its 45th year. So okay. So over the course of 30 years, I'm writing out 30 twice. You'll see why. These trees can grow at the minimum of 36 inches to the maximum of 48 inches per year. So if you multiply these, and I'm going to do regular old-fashioned multiplication because I don't know if this is a no calculator section or not. 6 times 0 is 0, and that's 18. That's an 8. Carry the 0, you're a 0. Bleh. So the minimum that it will grow will be 1080, like snowboarding. The maximum, so this is how much it would grow over the span of 30 years. I'm not done yet. If I do the same thing over here, 8 times 0 is 0, 8 times 3 is 24, carry the 0, 4 times 0 is 0, 4 times 3 is 12, 0, 4, 4, 1. So that's the maximum it will grow over 30 years. That's the minimum it will grow over 30 years. On top of that, it's already 240 inches tall. And on top of that, it's already 240 inches tall. So when you add these guys up, the minimum that it will be is 1320. The maximum it will be is 1680. The answer is D. Yeah, I think it would have been very easy for me to choose C, but I didn't. But this is what we're looking at. Kind of weird. Didn't like it. Line H is defined by y equals negative 8x plus 7. What is the slope of a line that is perpendicular to line H in the xy plane? Well, the slope of line H is negative 8, or negative 8 over 1. Things that are perpendicular are negative reciprocals, also called opposite reciprocals, which means you take your fraction, you flip it upside down, and if it was once negative, it's now positive. If it was once positive, it's now negative. But this is my answer because I flipped it. I made it positive. These two guys are negative reciprocals of each other. So the slope has to be positive 1 over 8 in order for it to be perpendicular to line H right there. One solution to the given equation can be written as x equals 5 plus n, the square root of n, where n is a constant. 1 is the value of n. Well, let's look at that. I can't see that as being factorable. It's not, so we're going to have to do the old quadratic formula. Let me sing a song. Hopefully this goes viral. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. A is invisible 1. B is negative 10. C is 14. Let's plug it in. Negative 10. It's regular old 10. Plus or minus, positive or negative, the square root of negative 10 in parentheses squared minus 4 times 1 times 14 all over 2 times 1. So let's move that over here, do some simplifying. 10 plus or minus the square root of 100, because negative 10 squared is 100, minus 56 all over 2 times 1. Let me get my calculator out. 2. Now, I think what's going to happen is this is going to be a nice even number that you can use the traits of simplifying roots to pull a 2 out. That's probably what's going to happen, and that's why this looks like this without an over 2. You might be thinking, what about the over 2, and where does that 5 come from? You'll see. I think I know what's going to happen here. I've been doing this for a few years. 100 minus 56 is 44. All over 2. Now, if I want to simplify 44, I can write out 44 as 2 times 2 times 11, right? Bring out a set of 2's, and that gives you 2 root 11. So I'm going to rewrite this as 10 plus or minus 2 root 11 all over 2. What I can do is I can factor a 2 out of the top. So I have 2 parentheses, 5, positive or negative. That 2 is now gone if I factor it out. Square root of 11 over 2. These 2's cross each other out. You're left with 5 plus or minus the square root of 11. And in this case, they only want the plus version, so we'll pretend that's not there. But what they really want is what's inside the root. And n is going to be 11, the number that's inside the root. That's it. Rectangular prism A is similar to rectangular prism B, where the longest side of rectangular prism A corresponds to the longest side of rectangular prism B. Make sense? The table gives the volumes in cubic meters of the 2 prisms. The length of the longest side of rectangular prism A is 6 meters. What is the length in meters of the longest side of rectangular prism B? All right, if I remember anything from 8th grade math, it's that if 2 solids are similar, all right, then you have the volume of one of yours, so we'll say volume A over the volume of B is going to be equal to the ratio of its corresponding parts. So you're going to say, I guess, the length of A over the length of B. But not only do you do that, you have to cube it if we're talking about volume. Okay, so let's plug in what we know. We know that 96 is the volume A. We know that 12 is the volume of B. I'll simplify. I'll get there in a minute. The length of volume A, told me that right, is 6. Okay. So that'll be cubed over, I don't know. Now, 96 over 12 is the same thing as 8. So I've got 8 over 1 equals 6 to the 3rd power is 216. And then you got yourself x cubed right there. Since this is a proportion, you cross multiply. So you have 8 x to the 3rd equals 216. Divide everything by 8. Divide everything by 8. It's going to give you 27. I hope so. X to the 3rd equals, this is 27. To get x all by itself, you cube root both sides, cube root everything, and when you cube root everything, you get a perfect 3 meters. 3 meters. Dunzo. The solution to the given system of equations is the ordered pair x, y. What is the value of x? All right, so this is what I think I'm going to do. I could do substitution if I wanted to. I can solve the top one for x and then plug stuff in. But what I also can do is if I do elimination and get rid of the y values, make the y values disappear, it leaves me with the x values, which is what I want to do. So in order to do elimination, I'm going to multiply the top equation by -3 and the bottom equation by regular 2. What that's going to get me is a -6y and a positive 6y, and I can do elimination to make the y's go away, leaving me with just the x's. So if I multiply the top equation by -3, I get -3x minus 6y equals -33. If I multiply the bottom equation by 2, that gives me 6x plus 6y equals 48. When I use elimination and add the lines, these go away. -3x plus 6x is regular 3x. -33 plus 48 is 15. Divide everything by 3. Divide everything by 3. X equals 5. And I want the x value. I'm not going to bother plugging stuff in to try to find the y value when I already have the x value. X is 5. I'm donezo. That's the answer. For the given function g, what is the value of g of 8? So I'm no longer dealing with a multiple choice here. This is, let's just plug it in and see what happens. G of 8 means I'm going to rewrite this equation and replace every x value with 8. So I have 2 plus 8 over 8. 2 plus 8 is 10. 10 over 8 simplifies to the improper fraction 5 over 4. I'm not sure what the SATs want you to do, but 5 over 4 can be written as 1 and 1/4. I guess if this is the real deal, make sure that you follow the directions as far as mixed numbers versus improper fractions. But each of these guys would be an acceptable answer in my book. Jessica opened a bank account that earns 2% interest compounded annually. Her initial deposit was $100, and she used that expression right there to find the value of the account after 2 years. Jessica's friend Tyshawn found an account that earns 2.5% interest compounded annually. Okay, that's nice, actually. Tyshawn made an initial deposit of $100 into this account. At the same time, Jessica made a deposit of $100 into her account. After 10 years, how much more money will Tyshawn's initial deposit have earned than Jessica's initial deposit? Round your answer to the nearest cent and ignore the dollar sign when gridding your response. Well, I don't have to grid nothing unless I'm doing the griddy. Let's discuss Tyshawn. We'll do Tyshawn, T for Tyshawn. This formula comes from the idea of compound interest formula. Now, since this is talking about something that's being done annually, I can use the idea that we start out with $100, right? You have 100%, you add the decimal rate, and you take it to the time power. Okay, this is compound interest done annually. If it wasn't annually, we would have divided by n and n attached here, but I don't see that. So if you're wondering what the x is 1 or 100% plus whatever rate it gives you. So Tyshawn starts out with $100, right? So $100, just like Jessica did. You have 1, and you're adding 2.5%. 2.5% as a decimal is 0.025 taken to the 5th power. Is it 5th power? No, it's taken to the 10th power because we're talking about 10 years. Okay, so if you did a little bit of math, 100 times 1 plus 0.025 is going to be 1.025 to the 10th power. Okay. Now, this is part of the calculator section. So it would be very, 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 very difficult to attempt this without the use of a calculator. If you plug all of that in, you'll find out that Tyshawn has a current investment of $128, 0.008, so we'll put 0.01 cent. So got a penny in there. That's good. Now we have Jessica. Jessica's formula is going to be very, very, very similar, but Jessica was 2% compounded annually. So hers is going to be 100 times 1 plus 2%, which is the decimal 2 cents. All of that to the 10th power. Okay. That simplifies to 100 times 1.02 to the 10th power. A little bit of calculator trickery, and Jessica ends up being $121.89. Actually, it's 0.899, so we will round this to 90 cents. Now, the question that's being asked is, after 10 years, how much more money will Tyshawn's initial deposit have earned than Jess's initial deposit? Okay, so Tyshawn is 128.01. Jessica is 121.90. Okay, you subtract the one from the other, you subtract the one from the other, and I'm doing this the old-fashioned way, $6.11. Wow, after 10 years, a whole $6.11. Worth it.